On this special Democracy Day, Professor Chukwuma Soludo.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Please be seated. What a day again. Let me say how pleased I am and to say Happy Democracy Day to all of you. And this is to appreciate Pastor Yomade and the wife and members of the Covenant Nation for the invitation and for dutifully organizing this annual impactful event. Thank you very much for this national service. And to my colleagues, Professor Jega, the former president, I missed yours. I was rushing and still writing my thing. You see, I'm still with my laptop because even at the waiting room there, I was still writing. So forgive me, and I'm going to read quite a bit of it. And to my teacher, I just whispered to him, Governor Fashola, that I will be coming for part 2. Because when I was sworn in as governor, he happened to be one of the first persons. I went to him then as Minister of Works to take some tutorial because there are quite a lot of parallels and similarities between Anambra State and Lagos. Lagos has the smallest landmass, but Lagos is expanding by reclaiming the ocean. Anambra is Anambra is the second to Lagos in terms of landmass. We are shrinking due to gully erosion. We have the second highest population density after Lagos. And so quite a whole lot of parallels. That's why I went to him for some tutorials on how to begin. And fortuitously, the subject matter he discussed now, he told me, given the context of the time, start with law and order. Law and order. And I want to say to you, my teacher, that when you go to Anambra today, when we set up SASA, a special anti-touting squad, where we have the Ocha Brigade getting the violators of environment and so on, or we have ATMA, our Road Transport Management Agency, catching all the violators and being active and clearing the roads and so on and so forth. Well, the ones that they do right, I give you credit. The ones they do wrong, they hold me. Let me quite say that quite excited to be here as always, even though I must apologize that what you're going to hear will be quite disjointed because, like I said, even up until this, while I was at the waiting room, I was still writing. And I'm going to dutifully just read it. I haven't even reread it. I've been writing through to this morning and just come here to read. If I have punctuation errors and so on, you take it, but you'll get it after my speech. And because of where I sit now, I have to carefully just read every word because in this time and moment, I don't want to come back to say, no, I was misquoted. I don't have the liberty of my teacher here. And Prof, because I watched a little bit from the waiting room. I saw I was watching an iPad, part of your intervention. I can still see you will read and then take off to explain and so on. Whatever you say now, you have immunity anyway. So I don't. So let me get to it. I was asked to speak on rebuilding our nation. That's the title, Rebuilding Our Nation. This is a short topic, but we will need volumes of books to address. The topic itself presumes a sense of nostalgia for a nation with a glorious past and to which we now need to rebuild. Several thoughts race through my mind as I try to reflect on the topic. Have we had a nation? I am reminded of the famous quote by the late sage, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who argued that, quote, Nigeria is not a nation. It is a mere geographical expression, in his Path to Freedom, 1947. And during the campaign for the federal elections in 1959, Dr. Azikiwe and Alhaji Ahmadu Bello were reported to have had exchanges which reflected the fundamental differences about Nigeria among the founding fathers. Zik was reported to have told Bello, quote, let us forget our differences, end of quote. And Ahmadu Bello was reported to have retorted, no, quote, no, let us understand our differences. I am a Muslim and a Northerner. You are a Christian and an Easterner. By understanding our differences, we can build unity in our country, end of quote. But have we actually had a true country? Chinua Achebe's view was that, quote, there was a country, end of quote. There was a country. That's Chinua Achebe. From Awolowo's view in 1947 to the views of Ahmadu Bello of 1959 and Chinua Achebe's 2012, what has changed? Nigeria is said to have about 371 ethnic groups speaking over 500 languages. It is also a multi-religious country. Our current national anthem, which I love, acknowledges our differences, but with a positive affirmation of our resolve to stick together when it says, though tribe and tongue may differ, but in brotherhood we stand. The march to nationhood is still an aspirational prayer in the last stanza of our national anthem, where we pray to God of all creation to grant this our one request to, quote, help us to build a nation where no one is oppressed, and so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed, end of quote. The point must therefore be made that Nigeria, in its checkered history, has always been a work in progress in its march towards a more peaceful, united, equitable, and prosperous nation. We need to be intentional about creating what the slogan of the National Party of Nigeria, NPN, 1978 to 1983, described as, quote, one nation, one destiny. And so consequently, it may be more appropriate to possibly rephrase the title for this intervention as, quote, creating a sustainable Nigerian nation. This should indeed be the urgent everyday conversation by all Nigerians, and I won't pretend that I can address it in a few minutes conversation. Nigeria was stitched together some 111 years ago, and within the first 46 years, our founding fathers organized and liberated us from colonial rule. In the last 65 years or so, we have had checkered experimentations to forge a nation to liberate our people from underdevelopment. I will argue that this second epoch of our liberation struggle, unquote, has not been fought with purpose-driven organizations with intent to defeat underdevelopment, nor have we intentionally created the new Nigerians to forge a new sustainable nation. That will be the thesis of what I posit here. I'm not going to write a treatise on whole Nigeria, how to get Nigeria up, but we're going to be focusing on two things. Mine will just be to provoke debate and not necessarily to provide all the answers. But before we go further, I need to make a few caveats. As we know, every Nigerian has a long list of what is wrong with Nigeria. Whenever you get Nigerians seated, everybody has his own long list. These people, the other one, I am hungry, I am this one, I have my own list too. But I am not here to rehash the book of Lamentations. I am a die-hard optimist and a believer in Nigeria's future. I apply for my current job because I believe that I can join millions of Nigerians in the search for solutions. Yes, solutions, not lamentations. I see the Nigerian cup as half full and not half empty. I carry my own Nigerianness on my head and my dress. If you look at my cap, you will see this eagle, and my dress, you see the eagle. It's the eagle on Nigeria's coat of arms. So I carry my own Nigeria on my head and my destiny, and so on. To keep my optimism going, I try a lot of the time to focus more on what is right with or working in Nigeria. Because if you don't have anything else to think about, just think, remember, you have the Fasholas of this world, you have Pastor Produce, you have Jagas, and then you have the biggest refinery in the world built by Nigerian. And just remember those positive, it makes your day bright a little bit rather than dwelling on the woes and so on and so forth. So I often focus on what is working and what is right. And you can have 100 of such that you can list. Yes, we still have a very long way to go, but we must appreciate how far we have come. Often, because unless we do, if you check Lagos, here you are, most of you here in Lagos. Check Lagos 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It's not the same as Lagos of today. After graduation, I was working at La Pal House at Coopers and Library. Going through the traffic, and then there was no Third Mainland Bridge. And then going through the traffic and getting down to the island every day, or going through Oshodi, where you need to have a human traffic. You need to ask somebody to step out so you can put your feet. And Lagos of today, there is something to appreciate that we have come a long way, albeit that there is still a long way to go. Second, I would disappoint many who would expect me to comment on the economy. I'll start by disappointing Pastor Oyemade. Or to use this forum to offer another, quote, blueprint for economic reforms. I have access to the federal government to offer my advice, if any, and this platform cannot serve the purpose. But let's be clear, and I'm not shy to say this, that the audacious structural reforms embarked upon by the current administration of His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR have rescued the economy from the tipping point. The endorsements by the World Bank, the IMF, the London Financial Times, rating agencies such as Fitch, Moody's, etc., in my view, are well-deserved. Of course, many people know that I made a living criticizing the World Bank and the IMF. I made quite tons of money criticizing even books, which one of my books was, they told me at the World Bank bookshop, it was their bestseller at some point. As governor of Anambra, I have even rejected a World Bank loan because of the terms. But on the matter of the trajectory of the current economic reforms, the World Bank and others, in my view, are largely right. Funny enough, when these institutions criticize the government, some people use them as validation of their own criticisms. But when the same institutions give a positive report, they are derided as, quote, neoliberal, out-of-touch institutions. In 2023, I had described the state of the economy when this government assumed office as akin to a standing dead horse. And public finance was about to tip from insolvency with potential catastrophic consequences, including possible mass retrenchment of workers and or arrears of salaries and pension. You see, when the previous administration passed the 2023 budget, that had a clause that subsidies will end by end of June. It was an indication we had reached the end. You could go no further. There's a limit to which you can continue to print money, to do business. And the consequences of hyper or high inflation were just predictable. I'm one of those who raised the alarms at some point, and at some point I had to say to the regime then, with the then governor of Central Bank, and I'm happy to say this publicly, in one session, coming back to rule of law, I had said to them that this printing of money, illegally, printing of naira, if the CBN Act, the provisions were obeyed, there was no time that you could have had more than 500 billion standing as ways and means. None. But they were obdurately, illegally printing money, went to 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 10 trillion, 12 trillion. That was when I said at a meeting, Governor, obey the law or amend the law. The way you are going was tipping the economy into the Atlantic Ocean. And what he said then, the response was, come and imprison me. I am helping the country. I knew that that particular act of printing money, and they printed up to 20-something trillion and poured into the system, and you expect the exchange rate to remain the same, inflation to remain the same, and so on and so forth. That's a joke. Elementary economics tells us that that was the recipe for disaster. And we met it. So when I make the point that we had, if you didn't do the kind of, subsidy removal and all of those things that had to, or dealing with the exchange rate, nobody was going to invest with the multiple exchange rate regime and the arrears that were not paying people and so on and so forth. We had reached where the economy was just standing still, couldn't move any further. And you needed a fundamental rejigging for it to begin to breathe again. And thank God, at least we're here, but still a long way to go. So public finance is back on a solvency path, and macro fundamentals are recovering positively. Yes, there are still a lot more to do, but I urge the president and his team to stay the course. Many analysts have interesting opinions, unquote, but I urge them to go deeper, conduct rigorous counterfactual analysis, and provide credible alternatives. As a friend said recently, the task is always easy, especially if you are not the one doing it. It's always easy. They should just fix power. They should just fix, build roads. They should just... That's what somebody said to me recently. Say, no, don't do anything else. Just give us electricity. I said, as if I'm just going to go and switch on a tap. This is one country where every year people celebrate the previous year or years as the, quote, the good old days. And every new regime points out how it is the only one to bring positive change since the world was created. And I will say to you, but like every Nigerian has his own long list of what is wrong, so also is the list of, quote, expert opinions. For many, the list of what we must do would include, A, maybe restructuring the federation and the new constitution. These are the kind of things you hear, all manner of debates going on every day. Collaborative and coordination arrangements among the 3 tiers of government, tackling corruption, ensuring predictable and stable macro environment, including low and stable inflation and the exchange rate, addressing security, law and order, rule of law, state policing, providing infrastructure, especially electricity and transport, food security, addressing poverty and unemployment, investing in people, health, education, and empowering vulnerable groups, prioritizing technology, industrialization, and creative economy, fully exploiting our natural resources, tackling challenges of the environment, desertification, flooding, and erosion, ethical and transformational leadership that also delivers efficient, effective, transparent, and accountable governance, etc., etc. The list is quite long. But the real challenge is how to accomplish this, especially given the binding resource constraints and the distributional consequences of any action that you take. So I won't waste your time on this. I'm sure you can add to the long list of what we must do. Somebody the other day said, I'm hungry. And I said, in the part of the world where I come from, people find it shameful for somebody to come out and be saying, I'm hungry. And so when the hunger protest also happened, I know in the Southeast, we launched a different kind of movement, farm to feed. And we say in our place, go and do something about it and not to complain about it. So these things, long list, everybody has his own. But let me return to the substance of our contribution. The nature, and that is the nature of the organization and citizenship required for sustainable nationhood and success in the second liberation struggle against underdevelopment. The first is that we must give our politics a soul by intentionally orchestrating ideologically driven political parties. And second, a new Nigerian must be born again through ethical value rebirth. I say born again, unquote. The time for both to happen was yesterday, but today is still on time because tomorrow may be too late. Let me now get on to these two ideas, and that's where the major area of my contribution to this conversation. The first is this ideological foundations for the next Nigeria, and let's give soul to our politics. Ideology is a system of ideas, beliefs and ideals which define our worldview about the economic, social, and political organization of a society to guarantee happiness, liberty, and welfare of citizens. Individuals who share a similar ideology form a political party, organize and seek power to govern in accordance with their ideology and these consequential policies and programs. More practically, political parties are grouped as either left of center or right of center, depending on their location on the spectrum of the neoliberal progressivism to supra-conservatism. It's a spectrum. Ideological thing is a spectrum. Depending on where you fall on this spectrum, then you are classified. There are, however, different shades in between. But a political party, what it solves, must have a defined ideology from which one can even predict its possible stance or policy on different economic and social issues. Party and government policies and programs are largely derived from the ideology of the party. A political party that is ideologically driven ensures policy program clarity, predictability, and continuity. Without ideology, parties governed by whims and policies through program reversals are common even when the same party retains power. I'm trying to make fundamental argument about how ideological your core beliefs, the framework with which you do your analysis, what you believe, and from which you even derive your policies and so on. If you don't have people who share the same, on the same boat, all this our talk about policy continuity and so on and so forth, it's just, so they govern. Even when within the same party. For those who call for policy continuity, they are inadvertently bemoaning the absence of ideology in party or governance. Ideology is therefore the soul of a political party. And in a multi-party democracy, it is the only way to ensure policy program continuity and sustainable progress. And just come with me. On this score, our past may be the beacon to our future. We seem to have developed backwards as the gains of the second and third republics in terms of rigorous ideological debates and struggles have literally disappeared. I invite you to review the ideologies and programs of the 5 and later 6 political parties in the Second Republic of 1979 to 83. We had the GNPP, Great Nigerian People's Party, the National Party of Nigeria, NPN, the NPP, Nigerian People's Party, People's Redemption Party, PRP, and Unity Party of Nigeria, UPN, and later the Nigeria Advanced Party of Tunji Braithwaite. I can still remember the ideologies and cardinal programs. UPN then, for example, Bafemi Awolowo's UPN. If I remember, part of the 4 cardinal programs, something like free education at all levels, free health care at all levels, comprehensive rural development, and a strong national economy. These were like, people sang them, something of this nature. I can still remember them decades. I was just getting into the university then, and in the university days, we were debating all of this. I can still remember them. All the 6 states controlled by Chief Obafemi Awolowo's UPN implemented its programs on free education and free medical services. And all the states of NPN implemented its cardinal programs of mass housing and green revolution, etc., etc. During the Third Republic, President Babangida experimented with 2 ideologically defined parties, National Republican Convention, NRC, as right of center, and SDP, left of center. Now, what do we have today? Huh? In my view, ladies and gentlemen, what we have is one party. And the name of that party, quote, Nigerian Elite PLC, NEP, with the sole goal of grabbing power and governing, unquote, as the spirit directs, or government by consultants' blueprints. Forget about the different political parties. They are, with 1 or 2 exceptions, but different factions of this Nigeria Elite PLC, largely split by quarrels over exclusion or inclusion in the, quote, dining table. Individuals who can get a seat at the table suddenly realize that, quote, nothing is working, and either form their own parties or join others to, quote, fight for a better Nigeria, end of quote. A euphemism that has become for bring me closer, end of quote. There are extremely very few exceptions, however, who are driven by principles. The 2 parties which control most of Nigerian states are PDP and APC. And I ask you, just think for a moment. Can you tell an APC or PDP state if you see one? I don't know if you get my drift. Can you tell if you see an a state controlled by PDP, state controlled by APC, can you tell the difference? Yeah. In the Second Republic, all the 6 states controlled by UPN, we knew, you could tell, once UPN got power, you could predict what their policies, what their programs would be, and they dutifully implemented them. Today, parties, so what is the difference? I don't know how many politicians today, because we used to debate as student activists in those days, we used to debate the different ideologies of these parties, and we used to have these politicians come on television debating their various ideologies, what they stood for. It was the intellectual wings of these parties were very active. Some of them even had ideology conclaves of each political party. Today, not anymore. So I don't know how many politicians today can hold up and explain or defend the ideologies of their political parties. Indeed, the speed with which people switch parties is a testament that political parties are mere platforms of convenient opportunism. No principles, no public purpose, only personal convenience. Even the APC started off as a marriage of convenience with the merger of ACN, ANPP, CPC, and factions of APGA and PDP with the goal of grabbing power. But I dare to suggest that after 10 years of governing at the center and controlling most states of Nigeria, it is time to be very intentional about its ideological foundations. We need to be core. You need to have a core of what we can relate to. So we know what we are getting, and we can predict what the next one will be, and so on and so forth. Without strong ideological foundations, it is difficult to predict what happens. It will become, depending on who comes, throw away everything, start this one again, and go. Some will go extreme right, some will go extreme left, extreme right, or some will go even backwards, as the case may be. I have reviewed the objectives and programs of almost all the registered political parties today in Nigeria, and I can confirm that they are largely, quote, copy and paste to scale through registration by INEC. Prof. When they come for your registration, you have to have a checklist. Do you have a manifesto? Yes. Do you have your constitution? Yes. So everybody goes, you take this one. Okay, they need, what is manifesto? You go and grab the one that the other people have, turn it and change a few things. You submit. Okay, they have manifesto. Yeah. With little or no substantive differences. In substance, almost all the political parties subscribe to the social democratic ideals. That might surprise you. In terms of what they are saying in their manifesto, registered with INEC, most of them subscribe to the social democratic ideals, which means most of these parties are left of center. So ideologically speaking, there are no opposition political parties in Nigeria. Any reference to, quote, opposition parties is mere semantics, and at best refers to factions of the same Nigeria elite PLC, currently excluded from the dining table. When you are excluded, you form, In many instances, the executive will still have to, quote, lobby members of its own party in the legislature to support its agenda. So in many cases, the real opposition are even factions of the same party, because they just got there, not believing in anything, not driven by anything. They're just a platform to get power, and that's it. And then we go as the Spirit directs us. Therefore, to give our politics content and their soul, things must change. Organizing Nigerians around ideological divides is a sustainable way to mobilize citizens across ethnic and religious divides. I remember then of the PRP days. Chinua Achebe joined the PRP together with Aminu Kano's party. And I remember the lecture he gave at the University of Nigeria then, justifying why he joined, and detailed ideological foundations of PRP and why he should go with Aminu Kano, not with Zig's MPP or with all the other ones that were popular, or MPN. Why the MPN was the bourgeois, the class discussions of those days, and so on and so forth. We must get back as a way to get our place. It is the surest way for a new politics to evolve from the current, quote, turn by turn or chop by chop politics to transformational politics of development that guarantees an answer to the prayer contained in the last stanza of our national anthem. I don't know how the authentic parties will emerge, but I believe that we should intentionally orchestrate them via legislation or regulation. Without this, our politics will continue to be rudderless. For me, and for us at the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA, we subscribe to a pragmatic progressivism, a centrist economic agenda, progressive social agenda with conservative moral values. The 5 fingers of our programs include security, law and order, infrastructure and economic transformation, human capital and social contract that seeks to leave no one behind, and then D, transparent and accountable governance with a new value system, and finally, environmental sustainability, that is effective fiscal planning and taming climate change, flood and gully erosion. For us in APGA, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of Nigeria on fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy should be the Bible and Quran of public policy in Nigeria. Chapter 2 of Nigerian Constitution provides detailed progressive agenda designed to give every Nigerian a stake in the survival and prosperity of the country en route to shared nationhood. Our policies on totally free primary and secondary education in public schools and free delivery in all, and free antenatal and free delivery in all public hospitals, which have benefited hundreds of thousands of children and women, are part of the progressive agenda, etc. So if you call for progressives in Nigeria, I will proudly raise my hands and can list a dozen or so policies and interventions of my government in Anambra that are intentionally progressive to leave no one behind. For us, progressivism is not a slogan. It is a social political movement and an ideology. It's a belief system about how society should be organized and governed. So as a first step towards a new party politics in Nigeria, let political parties unite along ideological lines, not necessarily a merger. Them unite. If you are, I'm a Catholic. If we are Catholics, we believe in the same way of celebrating a mass and so on and so forth. And then you say, my own is St. Peter's this, my own is, and this. You are the same. Come together as one. If you unite for the purposes of sustaining or moving Nigeria forward. We should awaken the spirits of Dr. M.I. Okpara, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Malam Aminu Kano, etc. In 1983, the parties with progressive credentials, Awolowo's UPN, his manifesto, if I remember, his ideology then was summarized as scientific socialism. Isaac Iwe's NPP with his ideology of neo-welfarism, and Aminu Kano's PRP, I think something like democratic humanism. They formed the Progressive People's Alliance, PPA, ahead of 1983 general elections. Their mistake was that they could not field one presidential candidate. That was their mistake. If you are all progressives and you agree that you have some fundamental underlying core that holds you together, they formed PPA, but they couldn't field a presidential candidate, and that was the mistake. So on ideological basis, go to INEC, pick up all the manifestos of our political parties, even their various websites, and study. And all these political parties, the following parties in Nigeria are largely in the same room and sharing democratic and center-left credentials. APGA, APC, Labour Party, Social Democratic Party SDP, YPP, ZLP, NNPP, PRP, and AA. Review them. They are all left of center parties. And so, my view is that all these center-left parties should form the new Progressive People's Alliance, PPA, ahead of 2027 general elections, but avoid the mistake of 1983. Unlike in 1983, the new PPA should field one presidential candidate in 2027. The Alliance of Progressive must refine and deepen the platform of progressivism and keep the flag of reforms flying. Even politicians in PDP with progressive ideological leaning may also join the alliance. Nigerians need to see progressives working together to deepen and coordinate progressive reforms across all progressive states, as happened in the Second Republic, with impactful results. The others can then organize themselves, perhaps into the conservative movement, and present Nigeria with credible alternatives to policies and directions and so on. This will signal the birth of a new politics for sustainable transformation in Nigeria. Now, if we do this and we have all those who believe the same thing, instead of saying they're bickering as if we're not different or debating Mr. A, Mr. B, Let's all come together, if you all believe the same thing, and move this country forward for predictability, continuity, and sureness, and the people can know what they are picking from. After we finish this, the second part and the last, the second and the last point that I says, the ethical and value rebirth towards that new Nigerian. And I ask, after fixing, where are the Nigerians to play it or follow? And more often we focus on the leadership. For sure, there is a lot that is wrong with our leadership, but leadership often reflects the larger society, its values, ethics, culture, beliefs, and expectations. Leaders are products of the society, and you can't give what you don't have. Most Nigerians are, through acts of omission and commission, complicit in what ails Nigeria. We must solve it together through mass involvement and intentional social reengineering. We must deliberately create a critical mass of new Nigerians, unquote, who believe in her and are ready, if necessary, to die for her. The struggle for liberation from colonialism would not have been possible without the nationalists of the time. And the current struggle to liberate her from underdevelopment cannot be sustainable without what I call the neo-nationalists of today. No nation has prospered sustainably without the critical mass of patriotic, vigilant, and actively participatory citizenry. So, let the neo-nationalists ready to die for Nigeria raise their hands. I'm looking around. Aha. Predictably, very few. Predictably, very few. Those who are the neo-nationalists. You cannot have a nation without nationalists. Okay? So very few. And this is quite telling. So how do we raise the army of Nigerian champions to create the future we desire then? If there are very few that are willing to step out and be the ones who want to die for the country. The answer is long. But the shortest answer is to give the citizens stakes in the society by investing in their future. Examples like, current examples, what the federal government is doing, the NIL Fund, the student loan scheme by the federal government, which was also, I think, the case in Lagos here and Kaduna states, the cash transfer schemes. In Anambra, we have the 1U 2 Skills program, creating thousands of our youth millionaires, a free primary and secondary education, and soon to disburse bursary program to our students in higher institutions. All these excite youths and students and could hopefully create stakeholders in the Futures project. When we set out and distributed over 2.2 million palm and coconut seedlings and other rare seedlings to over 180,000 households. And the economics is that a poor household that gets 10 to 15 of this, when it starts fruiting in 4 or 5 years, will be permanently out of poverty. It was an intentional progressive agenda to lift hundreds of thousands of families permanently out of poverty. That is how you create this stake. We must give people stake. But we must uproot the debilitating culture of corruption and the freebies and freebies. Many of you won't like this part now. The easy or free money culture and the institutions that are weaponized to sustain them. The culture that celebrates and expects something for nothing or wealth without work must give way for a culture that rewards and celebrates hard work, enterprise, and integrity. It is my thesis. It is my thesis that a society where no one asks or cares about sources of livelihood, or where most people expect, and celebrate unearned free money, is one where transactional governance will always trump transformational leadership. This dash culture, free money, and I will come in a second. There is a powerful connection between this freebies culture and criminality. criminality including bribery and corruption, drug trafficking, oil bunkering, internet scams, prostitution, trafficking in persons, banditry and kidnapping, etc. Beneficiaries of these crimes become lords of the manor, brandishing unexplainable wealth and phantom titles for validation, while the society cheers in celebration. And surely, a society gets more of what it celebrates. For the political class, ethnicity and religion provide easy ladder to the common purse, while most of the others, especially in our superstitious society, resort to, quote, magic. Of course, there is a long thesis about how the pervasive looting of public treasury by politicians and sharing of same to the poor masses over time have numbed public sensitivities and normalized the behavior to the extent that public officers who leave office poor are derided by the same masses as being, quote, stupid. Isn't that tragic? And that's a long topic for another day. I tell you, the day I gave a lecture just a few years before I joined government, I think 2016 or 17, I gave a lecture in a university. Public lecture. The hall filled, the auditorium was filled with only lecturers. This is a very important example to give you. Only lecturers. Minimum qualification there must have been a master's degree. And after speaking for a while, I was talking about, so I was leading to a point, and I asked them a question. How would you react? Give two examples. One, a minister, and I mentioned the portfolio of the minister. I won't tell you. And one, a state governor. And both of them served in government and served for 8 years. And they leave office. They were driving rickety Corolla, 2000 or whatever, before they went into office. And they leave office and went back to their car, went back to the high-density neighborhood where they were living in a 3-bedroom flat. And I asked them, what will you think of him, of these two persons? I remember the vice chancellor, who was sitting at the high table. His own reaction was, he was doing like this. And then from the audience, he must be stupid. Others say he must be a fool. Others say he must be an idiot. Someone says he must be pretending. They must be pretending. Then I rightly said, oh, I think I had somebody say that there must be sense. And everybody laughed in disbelief. For me, and I turned to them and said, if this is like a controlled experiment, what all of you are saying, the people there constituted, by the level of their qualifications and the exposure, they constituted 0.01% of the Nigerian super elite in terms of their education and knowledge. If this is what you think, you are the one expecting your public officers then to be corrupt. You are demanding of them to be, otherwise you think of them as being stupid, foolish, and so on and so forth. A few days ago, I had a conversation with some people, and we were talking about somebody, and one of them was saying that the one particular guy who had served in government as a minister, oh, the guy is very rich. And the person who was making this comment has no idea who this guy is. And I said, how do you know? He said, I don't remember. He was the minister in charge of this, where they were, I don't want to give an example that he gave because you might begin to guess who he was talking about. But how he was, the example he was given was because he was a minister in charge of a particular portfolio that was apparently in charge of a heavy, lot of transactions or contracts given, then he himself, he must have, if this, and all the people there concurred before I interjected. something is wrong. Something is wrong. Because I say, if this is what we expect, then that's the society that you do what? That you get. And how do we break this particular nexus, as it were? Okay, there is now a clash of values regarding the principles for financial success. This is another area. The time-tested principles of hard work, enterprise, and integrity are being challenged by the, quote, get rich young or die trying philosophy of teaming millions of our youths. Institutions that underpin the new magical principles for wealth are booming. Native doctors, marabouts, and prosperity pastors promising a crown without a cross. These merchants of wealth by magic deceive millions of our youths to shun hard work, expecting dash or free, easy money. Consequently, prison yards all over the world and bushes and forests are filled with youths in search of the easy money. Also, a horde of youths throng into politics with the sole intention to loot and not to serve. Are these the youths to build a new or next Nigeria? To make progress, dear friends, we must break this vicious culture and intentionally promote ethical value rebirth. Here again, ideology comes as a compass for mass mobilization. This is a national emergency requiring urgent national conversation. Current legislation that literally make the legislations that make the fight a federal government affair are inadequate. The liberation struggle must, from the clutches of corruption and challenge to the superstitious belief in wealth by magic or miracles, must be a mass movement requiring all social forces and organizations, including the churches, mosques, markets, civil society organizations, NGOs, etc. Indeed, the Nollywood has a pivotal role to play, because inadvertently, the Nollywood promoted this superstitious belief in wealth via cultism and ritual, and millions of our youth believe them to be true. Every movie that starts, you can predict how it will go, isn't it? Somebody in search of money, he will enter a cult group, and he will sacrifice somebody, isn't it? And then he will make money. And then after making money, buying assets and establishing, then he will repent. A pastor will come, and he will give his life to Christ, and all sins forgiven. But he still owns his properties. Now, that narrative for our youths is like, okay, there is an exit path. Let me first of all get it. Then I know eventually you go to a pastor, he will come and cast and bind, and everything will be forgiven. Now, and many of them are in jail all over the world. We must challenge this intentionally, and I said that we need to be, Nollywood is critical in all of this. We need them in the mental and cultural reconstruction. We must go back. I want anybody to show me somebody who has made money through this magic or so and grown wealth on a sustainable basis. If that were to be the case, I don't know, maybe these people should be the richest people on earth. The native doctors and the others who give you this and you become rich and so on and so forth, but they still need your money for themselves. They don't sit down and multiply their own money. Let me tell you, if you have 10 naira and you keep doubling it every day, in 6 months you'll be the richest man on earth. So if these things work, why aren't there the Dangotes and the Elon Musks of this world? People are going to the moon and to the distance, and these people want human sacrifice, they want baby, they want this one, they want woman. Again, connecting the dots to criminality. I haven't seen, show me. And I'll come to that in a second, because in Anambra, we have something going on. We need a citizens' code of conduct and reinvent institutions like the SY War Against Indiscipline and Corruption, MAMSA, and mainstream them with national, state, local government, and community institutions. Our curriculum in primary and secondary schools must include civics and nationalism. In Anambra, and as part of our fight against criminality, we decided to go to the roots and seek to uproot the institutions that give the criminals a false sense of invincibility and promise of wealth by magical means. With our novel Homeland Security Law enacted January this year, we have criminalized the practice by native doctors and others that promise wealth by magical means. The use of any property for manufacture, sale, or consumption of illicit drugs, kidnapping, etc. If we get you any of these things practiced in any property, become a property offense. You can't use any property in Anambra, whether land or building, to do any of these things, and we'll take the property will belong to the state, and we'll prosecute you. We have challenged anyone to come and prove that one can be wealthy through magic. I said to them, I also need money. So if you can, if this your magic can work, come to Oka. All of us will line up. My job will be made very easy, isn't it? My job will be made easy if all persons in Anambra are billionaires. I want us to line up. Come there and show me that you do bra, gra, gra, bra, and then it will be funny if it is not tragic, well, but it is tragic. Because thousands of our youths are being deceived. First of all, you do these things and you tell them that if they carry drug and go abroad, the scanning machines will not detect them because you've done the charms and the stuff for them. And they go there, the prison years are filled with all these guys. I think about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, 23 Nigerians were executed in Indonesia, 1 from Edo, 22 from Anambra. Yes. These guys were the ones, that's what they call Okite. They do the charm for you and you become anything. And they are the same people doing it for the criminal, the kidnappers in the bush. And I'm sure these bandits and so on who get into all these things, they go to patronize these same people. And if it was so, then the native doctors or some of the pastors should be the richest people on earth. And under our law, anyone could be questioned to explain his or her source of wealth. Anyone could be. And we have also stopped indiscriminate award of phantom chieftaincy titles, especially to persons without verifiable means of livelihood. Without verifiable means of livelihood. Because the first thing they do, they get into these crimes. Either Yahoo, or whatever. You catch them. Catch hordes of youths. They're doing nothing. 9 a.m. they're in the beer parlor drinking beer, and it's drinking beer. And it's waiting for magic. The other one, they go for crusade somewhere. And hoping when he sleeps there 7 days, money will start falling from the sky. No, now. So I'm sure, Pastor, you are going to help us in this one. Pastor will help with this crusade, this one. So we got to tell these guys, it just doesn't work. You know? So, the criminals and shady native doctors are on the run from Anambra. They call it also Soludo. Soludo's run that they are running. And together with the efforts of our security forces, this has brought crime rate to the lowest ever. And we believe that Anambra is now the safest state in Nigeria. We have a massive reorientation program, and I'm glad that other states in Nigeria are now copying the essential parts of our Homeland Security law. Because so comprehensive, we are tackling criminality at the roots, so to speak. We can't have a society this way, you know. There are those of them who do all this stuff. They finish all this, they go to the road, on the major roads where people are, and you put them along the road, and you say it is their culture. It's not our culture. We've told them, or they go to pollute our waters. All these women who dress with their red and white, they go to do all manner of things and pour into the river. It's not only an environmental crime now in Nigeria, in Anambra, we've connected it to criminality because they're also aiding and abetting these people. When you put these things into the water, somebody down the road has come to fetch water to drink and is drinking all the poison that you are pouring into the waters and so on and so forth. We must cleanse and begin a new society, a new mindset, a new society that can thrive and so on and so forth. So we have a massive reorientation program, especially challenging these superstitious beliefs in wealth through magic or miracles and systematically rescuing our youths and redirecting them back to basics, hard work, enterprise, and integrity as the proven templates for sustainable wealth. We are happy, as I said, that some states are taking this template. Our government is living by example in austere prudence, transparency, and accountability. In 3 years, we haven't borrowed a kobo, devoting 77% of our spending on capital projects, and the results of our transformation are evident. You've got to live out what you say. As a country, we must design conscious programs to kill religious and ethnic bigotry. We need a national conversation around citizenship versus indigenship versus residency. Can we create a Nigeria where state of origin or religion will no longer be a defining basis to participate or benefit from public space? A new Nigerian personality will never emerge if one is constantly reminded that irrespective of how many years or generations you have lived and even invested in a place and paid taxes all your life, you still don't belong there because you or your parents' state of, because of your parents' state of origin. You can't create the new Nigerian that will believe in this country and that can get on to do things. I remember in the First Republic, before even the First Republic, Nnamdi Azikiwe ran for election in Western region and won election into the House of, and I was almost formed the government. He would have become the premier of Western region, but for the cross-carpeting that happened then. The mayor of Enugu was one Usman, and I learned some Igbos were winning elections in Kano, and so on and so forth. We seem to have gone decades, we seem to have developed backwards. So the evolution of that Nigerian who will describe himself proudly as Nigerian and not necessarily as, oh, once Nigerians meet and shake hands, which state? Which state? And once he defines the state, that defines the person. You can never create a nation this way. We can't. And we must intentionally begin to have, like I said, part of the national conversation should also include a bureau to address grievances against the Nigerian state. And part of the process of building a nation is ongoing. Part of the process of the that is ongoing, open, and constructive dialogue. In Anambra, we have been trying to experiment with some experiments with impressive successes. Our philosophy of governance is summarized by the slogan, one state, one people, one agenda. We do not see senatorial zones. I am from the south. I don't see the boundary between north, south, and central. We don't see the religion or religious denominations. We prioritize our programs by need, designed to lift all boats up, especially the most neglected sections of society, rather than by nepotism or patronage. The 5 new general hospitals I gave you as an illustration, the 5 general hospitals we have completed in 3 years are all in the North Senatorial Zone, the same zone of my immediate predecessor, and none in my own Southern Zone. And my most celebrated urban regeneration at Okpoko is also in the North Zone. We are prioritizing the people that are in most need, rather than where I come from. This one is my village, and so on and so forth. We have erased the tensions among Christian denominations to the extent that the Christian Council of Nigeria, CCN, including the Anglicans, Methodists, Salvation Army, etc., gave us an award, a historic award, as father of ecumenism. If you know the denominational tensions in Anambra before I assumed office and that I've fostered over the years, you will understand what that means. and the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, PFN, agreed. I have appointed permanent secretaries from Abia and Osun states, while my other political appointees also, in addition from Anambra, cover Kogi, Ebonyi, Imo, Delta, Enugu, and the Imo states. Indeed, the 8,115 new teachers and over 1,000 medical professionals who recruited come from 18 states of Nigeria. We must intentionally mainstream one nation with one destiny. Conscious steps. It may be subtle, but a powerful way to create true Nigerians. On dealing with religion, Nigerians have something important to learn from the Yorubas. Where in a family, the husband could be a Muslim, the wife a pastor, while the children choose their religion. Okay? My teacher here is when he was governor, and I said, he is Muslim, and the wife happened to be Catholic, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So how does it work? So, but my teacher here, such a level of religious tolerance should be a template for the next Nigeria. And my teacher here, the Yorubas and President Tinubu, are really a leader in this regard. I applaud that, and it should be a template for us to take. So we must stem this bigotry and focus on the person. What value are you bringing to the table? Rather than how you worship, what language you speak, where your great-grandfather came from, and so on and so forth. Without that, we will never have a nation. We must think of the human person. And that actually, for me, this religion and ethnicity are weaponized by the politicians in order to have advantage. By keep emphasizing how we are different, so I am the one going to fight for you. We weaponize it in order to take advantage of the public purse. And until we get back to ideologically driven politics, where an Aminu Kano will go in alliance, Chinua Achebe will join Aminu Kano rather than join Azikiwe or rather than join anything. Unless we get there, we're just playing pranks with this. We must now conclude. Nigeria is God's greatest gift to the black race. For me, I believe that. I am a Pan-Africanist, still dreaming of the United States of Africa, with Nigeria at its core. I believe that this century is ours to claim and to dominate the next century. But it all depends on what foundation our generation lays today for our future generations. Frantz Fanon reminds us that, quote, each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. End of quote. As pilgrims here on earth, there is no time to waste. Complaints or protest is good, but better to do something constructive about the subject of complaint. For me, organization is power. And the powerful fundamental thing that we use in a democracy to mobilize and articulate the aspirations, the challenges of the people, and proffering solutions, that platform is the political party. So a fundamental step towards a sustainable Nigerian nation is for all apostles of progressive change to unite around a consolidated agenda for sustainable national rebirth. When progressives come together, let's give Nigerians a progressive agenda that everybody can relate with and that everybody can be held accountable to. For starters, all the Progressive People's Alliance PPA states should guarantee access to qualitative and truly free and compulsory primary education, as well as free secondary education and mass access to qualitative health care. For me, the UPN of Bafemi Awolowo's mantra on human capital will need to reinvent that and make it even justiciable, in my view. They should also commit to a timeline to make key provisions of Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which contains the principles for progressive change, enforceable. This will be the badge of progressivism and the foundation to give every child and every citizen a reasonable stake in the new Nigeria. We can't ask for their patriotism if we have not invested systematically in their future. Let the conversation continue. Thank you very much, and God bless you.